Okay, Derren, great to see you. Thanks for joining us over here at Car Dealer once again. What's the latest at the moment with used car prices out there?
They've remained strong in September. We'll be cutting off this week for October's values for those who still take monthly. But in live values, the average is going to be up almost 0.5% up, and that will be every month since car showrooms reopened. The values have moved up to some degree.
So that 0.5%, Derren, that's overall across the entire used car park, is it?
Yeah, that is generally the figure, which is quite unusual actually at every age under 5 years old. So every age under 5 years old has gone up by about 0.5%. Over 5 years old, whereas 5 years old is about level, and 10 years old has dropped, but only by less than 1%, which in pound note terms on a 10-year-old car is negligible.
So did you just say then that those older cars over 5 years, between 5 and 10 years, have gone up 11%?
No, sorry. Between 5 and over 5 years old, they've gone down. Under 5 years, they've gone up, but only very slightly in both cases.
Where are we seeing this the big rises then? Because I mean that 0.5%, it must be driven by some specific ages or cars.
Yeah, it's most mainstream sectors. It's petrol and diesel cars, and SUVs are probably the sector that's performed the most, which is where volumes are getting up to sort of 30% of the market, but they're still the cars that buyers want. City cars have actually dropped very slightly, but they're also the ones that have risen the most over the last year. So we kind of think that they've stabilised. The dealers are not wanting to pay more for those cars now because you can't push the retail up too much. So they still want to maintain their margins. So city cars have dropped very slightly, but all of the other mainstream sectors have gone up to a certain degree, with SUVs being the ones that have gone up by the most.
What sort of percentage rises have you seen in SUVs?
Well, SUV is only around 1%, which on average is £150. But we have got you've got some examples of X5s, Q5s that have gone up in value. Velar that have gone up by more than that. Even Mitsubishi Outlander, the diesel variety, has gone up as well. So yeah, diesel is still got a place in that market, so they have been increasing.
So, big question for you: how long is this going to continue? We've seen 3 months of rises there. I mean, is that going to continue for the rest of this year into quarter 4?
It's 4 months of rises, really. So it's during June, July, August, and September now. We've always been saying that it can't last forever. I myself said that quarter 4 could be a tipping point. I'm not brave enough to say that now, because I think at the moment there is no sign of it, and I don't want to be the one spreading doom and gloom out there. So at the moment it's holding up well. There does tend to be that what goes up has to come down, but that might not be yet, and it might not be to a large degree. We hear the phrase the new normal, and there are values that people are buying these cars for and requiring these cars. I think September new car will be interesting to see what happens with part exchanges coming from that. Normally volumes are very high in October. Personally, I don't think September will be as high as previous years, because I'm not sure you'll get that last 3 days activity that you tend to get pre-reg and pushing and things. So I think at the moment it's looking good, and the market will continue as it is for the time being. The auction houses are all very positive, all selling very well. Remarketers are putting their prices up still. I don't think it can carry on forever, but we're kind of bundling along the top, and I think it will carry on for a little while yet. Might get a little bit more sticky towards Christmas, but at the moment I think it's okay.
We've got a lot of customers out there who are probably looking in on the motor trade and thinking, well, how are used car prices going up when people are losing their jobs? The economy's in a very difficult place. We're about to head into more COVID restrictions, possibly a second lockdown. There will be people wondering how that's translated into rising used car prices. Perhaps you could explain it to them.
It's not easy to explain. We've never been in this situation before, and we didn't really expect it to be as strong as it's been. I hold our hands up at that. But I think there's lots of different dynamics. There's the pent-up demand, which has been talked about before. There's people buying because they don't want to go on public transport. I think there's definitely a case of people saying, I'm just going to spend some money. It cheers me up. I'm going to buy a car that I want. and rather than maybe one that I need. So people fighting over cars that are in good condition. Maybe people looking at a used car rather than a new car. It's acceptable to do that, although the new car market is okay. I think it's just a little bit of everything really that is causing the market to be so strong. Much needed for the industry. Obviously, after this couple of months of lockdown, no one really predicted it, but I just think that the supply levels aren't massive out there. At the moment, there's still extensions to leases and to Motability vehicles and things like that. So the supply isn't huge, which means that there's not an abundance of stock, but there's high demand. And when demand outweighs supply, prices go up. There's not shortages, but there's not an abundance of supply. And yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing.
Is that supply improving?
Sorry?
Is the supply improving?
I don't think it is at the moment, no. It could be based off part of what happens in September, because there will be obviously more registrations in September than there have been over the previous months. I think the transport situation has improved. We're not getting so much noise about that, but supply levels don't seem to be going up. If anything, they're kind of steady where they are at the moment. I think some of the poorer condition vehicles are struggling more than the better condition cars. So, but if there's fresh supply of good condition cars coming in, they will sell. I think supply levels are relatively stable now.
And I know we've talked about the rest of this year. I mean, what about looking a little bit further on the horizon, going into next year? I mean, if you're a betting man, where would you say prices would be around this time next year?
Oh, it's very difficult to look that far ahead. I think the first quarter is generally a good quarter for used cars. There can be a little bit of a tipping point around Easter. I think that may happen again. Those lease extensions will be coming back. You've got high volumes from previous years, so from 2018, cars that will come back in 2021. Cars from 2017 that didn't come back this year as well, they'll start to come back. I would say there's a potential for it to soften from around March, April time. I think when a realignment comes, it won't be seismic. There'll be a realignment, a bit like we maybe had last summer, where values did come down for a 2 or 3 month period by 2.5% over a period of time, like per month, but then it fluctuated and then improved. So I don't think we're going to see a crash, but I do think there will be a realignment at some point.
Derren, thanks ever so much for giving us up your time today, as usual, and the latest on the used car prices. Thanks for that.
It's a pleasure.